Welcome back to the Practically Pastoring Podcast. My name is Frank, and I am glad you're here. Today, we're diving into one of the toughest leadership moments in ministry. What do you do when a longtime volunteer is actually hurting the ministry they serve in? We'll talk about how to address it, set clear expectations for volunteers, and build a culture where transitions aren't punishments, but they're part of a healthy pastoring process.
I thought we were going to fire him and split the church, no?
Nope. Before I dive in, I want to introduce everyone who's on the show today. I'm Frank Gill. Up in Baltimore, Maryland, we got Jeffrey Simpson.
What's up?
Down next to me in Safety Harbor Community Covenant Evangelical Church, Andrew Larson.
It's a crazy acronym right there.
And Timothy Miller.
Hey, buddies.
Hey, so before we dive into this really practical question about volunteers, let me give a shout out to Church Merch.
Merch for your church.
If your church or ministry needs high quality, affordable merch without the headache, Church Merch has your back. They specialize in helping churches design and print custom t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, sunglasses,
CD-ROMs.
Floppy disks,
cell phone cases,
Floppies.
maybe. I need to take that, and much more. So you can focus
Vinyl
on
records.
ministry, not bulk orders or boxes. We've used them, we love them, and we know they'll take care of you. Check out promotions.
But if you want to work to get rid of the headaches of those things, I just checked, and you can get custom printed pill boxes.
Oh, pill organizers.
Perfect, dude.
That can
So
Custom cassette
look,
tapes for your sermons.
If you have an older congregation,
Bro.
custom pill boxes,
boxes with the church logo on
would kill.
Dude, can we get some custom hearing aid cases, though? Can we get that?
Or how about in-ear mix cases, in-ear headphones cases? That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, get off. There's so many pill bottles.
Custom canes?
Did you just search pill bottles on the website?
I just put pills.
Oh my goodness. Go to promotionsguy.com/churchmerch to get started. The link is in the show notes. All right.
Frank said headache, and so I thought, hey, I wonder if they have these. And sure enough, they do.
You got to have somewhere to keep the profans, you know?
Today's question comes from our Facebook group. It's anonymous, so I don't have a specific person to credit.
You know who
to.
you are.
But the question is how do you address a long-tenured nursery volunteer of 20-plus years whose outdated caregiving methods are deterring new families and mothers from using the church nursery?
Well, are we spanking kids in the nursery? What are we talking about here?
I mean, it might be.
It's more pinching, pinching than spanking.
Are we doing like non-disposable diapers and pinching kids? Like, what's going on?
Non-disposable diapers.
I went to a church in Ohio when I was growing up. They had like the stackable
The death
cribs.
trap cribs.
The death trap cribs like built into the wall.
Man.
And I remember this
those.
was like I moved
those.
to Safety Harbor in 1991. So this would have been late 80s or 1990. So I was like 7. I was like, what in the world is that? Why would you put a child in a cage? Looked like a dog kennel. It was the church nursery. Yeah, don't go there.
Wow.
What up, Westerville Bible Church?
Andrew's so quick to like
calls
name
them
things.
right.
Wow.
I'm sure they've renovated since then. It's been like 40 years.
I mean,
Maybe not.
Maybe not. All right. Here's I want to start off this question. Have you guys ever inherited a long tenured volunteer who actually wasn't a good fit for the place they were serving in?
100%.
Yes.
Talk about it.
It reminds me of like when you first get married and grandma's like, hey, I've got this couch for you. It would go great. And you accept the couch and then you put the couch in your living room and you're like, I'm
What's
so
that
thankful
smell?
for the couch, but man, this does not fit the space anymore. Like it was a really nice gesture and I'm sure it served its purpose for a long, long time, but this space needs renovating.
Grandma, can I take the plastic cover off though?
When I first stepped into student ministry, I was gifted a team of volunteers, and within, I don't know, probably the first 18 months, my team of volunteers looked a lot different than the ones that were gifted to me. And that, leadership differences, style changes, some necessary conversations that had to happen. It's uncomfortable. It's a little sticky and awkward, but it's 100% part of working in ministry. Like this is definitely going to happen.
I think what's important here is for you to have a clear set of, when it comes to like next gen ministries, the I would lean into like the safe church stuff, because that will address a lot of those issues. Hey, we can't do this kind of hands-on discipline. Let's assume it's pinching or whatever. We can't do this kind of hands-on discipline. This is just not acceptable under safe church. And, if they have a problem with that, then we can move you to a different ministry. But like that's a place where you draw a hard line in the sand. And, one of our questions I see here in our document is like, why is it hard to address these issues? Partly because we're cowardly. That's partly why, especially when we're a younger leader. And part of leadership is telling people hard things that are the truth. And so you might have to tell someone, in my world, that hasn't been with nursery workers. It's been more like singers who can't sing. And so you have to have that hard conversation and go, hey, I know you love this, and I can see that your heart's in it, but this takes a certain amount of skill, and right now you don't have it. And there's no way for the normal practice schedule that we can have with volunteers for you to make that improvement. So here are some options for voice lessons or whatever, and we can try again later. But that's a really difficult conversation, because the fact is, like you might have people serving in a ministry, and that ministry might not exist as it is right now if they hadn't served, even if they were doing it wrong. And so that's where the conversations can be pretty difficult. But that's what you signed up for.
Or we just assume that tenure equals effectiveness, and because they've been there so long, they're just immune. And what we're actually doing is delaying the necessary funeral. We should have had that difficult conversation like a long time ago.
Yeah, I do think that like when it comes to children's ministry or youth ministry, you actually have a pretty easy setup here, because you can just straight up say, hey, we like have to take how we care about kids very, very seriously, and we are not going to like mess around with this. And so like Andrew said, is like we are going to set up policies and expectations. Even if they haven't had new ones or good ones over the past couple of years, we're going to set this up now, and that may involve moving people around. So actually, I would argue.
Can I push on you a little bit with the way you communicated that, Frank? Because I think this is a point. I'm not saying you said anything wrong, but like I wouldn't lead with we want to take this very serious because they think they're taking it serious. I would lead with this is the policy we're going to implement, and like that's the end of the. It's not because we're like I wouldn't moralize it, because then they think, well, I'm also taking it serious, and this is the way I do it, and that's not the conversation. Is that's great the way you've been doing it. We're not doing it that way anymore, and this is what we're going to do. And if you can't do it this way, then you're not going to do it. You know what I mean? You have to just keep it as simple, and I think that's what you meant.
That's 100%. And so actually, see, we don't need ChatGPT. We just have to run it by Jeff, and they're like, here, let me fix up your.
Yeah, but his one-liners aren't nearly as good.
Right. But I will say that I think this is where stuff like nursery, children's ministry, youth ministry is a little bit easier to enter into those discussions about moving volunteers, where what you're talking about, Jeff, with like a longtime worship leader, singer, who can't sing, that's a much more, we had that conversation before. That's a much more complicated and like uncomfortable conversation. I mean, when I was in youth ministry, I inherited a couple volunteers, and pretty quickly I knew one of those volunteers was like, one, we're not going to mesh, like my leadership style on there and like the way we're not going to mesh. But two, it's actually kind of similar to this. Their way of approaching youth was very outdated. She tended to like look down on them and wanted to like, I don't know, like treat them younger than they were, and was very harsh in her words, especially to the other female students. And so I Jeff, you're 100% right. Like I was a coward for the first few like months I was there, because I was like, I can woo her by my own charisma to get her on board. And I forgot who told me, it's like, honestly, when you have those situations, like by not addressing it head on, you're just going to prolong it or make it worse. And so there was a moment where I was like, I don't think this is a good fit for you. And it ended up being it worked out for us, but it doesn't mean that like it's always going to work out well. But yeah, those conversations are hard, but I would say within the context of student ministry or kids ministry, helping create clear policy and saying this is what we're doing moving forward is actually a lot of leverage that you can have. And if, let's say it is pinching or spanking, that's something that's like, hey, whether it's safe churches.
Well, he said safe churches. I said ministry safe is the one that I go to.
Whatever it is.
Yeah,
I guarantee
whatever it is.
you, they probably have a policy about that.
And I would say this is where you need to have the elders have to have your back on this, like, or your denomination.
Oh, I guarantee you this is an elder's wife. This is
bro.
definitely an elder's wife.
Well, and I was going to say too, a lot of times when someone is stubborn like this, and we had a situation when the first Sunday I was here, I came down into the church basement, and there was an adult older volunteer alone with like a 10-year-old girl, and they were doing Sunday school lesson. And this is a situation of they didn't even notice it. I was like, this can never happen again. And it was my first Sunday. I was like, we cannot do this. He was like, well, we all know him. It's fine. It's no big deal. I'm like, I understand that. And I hear all the reasons, and I know he loves the kids and they love him, and it's like a grandpa, but it's never happening again. We can never do this because this is, and I explained why. And it was like, I just was like, I'm just not going to be liable for this. And so that person never worked in children's ministry again because of these ideas. Once or twice, he like filled in for a Sunday school and was doing stuff like, we're going to take the kids off campus and walk across the street to the playground. And I was like, we're not doing that. And because I didn't trust that he would abide by the policy, I had to just pull him out of children's ministry. And what I was going to say is a lot of times the people that are that like stubborn about doing a new policy also have the attitude of, I was here before you got here and I'll be here when you're gone, especially if you're like a youth pastor. They have like, I have so much tenure here that I'm going to pull rank and I can do what I want. And I mean, what are you going to do? Fire me? You'll probably be gone before I'm gone serving in this role. And that's a really difficult situation if you find yourself in that spot.
So everything I was going to say about this was what Jeff said. You go lean in on Ministry Safe, or a company that kind of helps set policy. But when he said, I'm not going to be liable for this, it's real easy. Find a court case, find a story in the news, and you print it out and you go to your elders. Hey, here's why we need to make this change. Yep. Hey, we have not had an issue here.
That's
this
good.
Church up the road is going through a lawsuit. This person just got arrested. Here's what's going on. We don't want to be those people. So in order to not have to deal with that, we are going to implement these policies. And I think that's a really hard thing to argue with. And again, people can't get on board with that.
Then they're gone.
What, you don't want to protect kids? You don't want to protect the reputation of the church?
Right.
You don't want to inconvenience yourself a little bit to learn something new, to save the church all kinds of heartache. And it makes it really easy to move on from them if they will not adapt to the new policies.
And there's some tension here that you have to live in, because do you separate the person from the problem? Do you, like, in ministry, that's really tough because we're dealing with people and we're also dealing with problems. So how do we deal with both of those things? I think you can lovingly affirm the legacy of a longtime volunteer, but at the same time, like, one unresolved issue with a long timer who you're afraid to address because you're like, they might leave, like their family might leave the church. But what if that unresolved issue has already pushed away 10 new families? Like, that's the thought process in my head all the time. Like, is it worth pushing away more people just to appease one person who's clearly not in line with kind of where we're headed as a church?
I heard a good policy from a pastor friend of mine up here. He said, basically, we don't give any resources to dysfunction. So if that's time, if that's funding, if that's effort, we just don't give resources to dysfunction. So we address dysfunction and we change the dysfunction, but we're not going to, because that's enabling. When you start, well, this person has, they have these weird outdated ideas. So what we're going to do is we're going to have another volunteer with them. So now you're resourcing their dysfunction instead of addressing the issue of probably rebellion. Probably this adult volunteer just doesn't want to be told what to do. And the reality is, if you can't be told what to do when it comes to working with kids, you just can't work with kids. That's just it. There's no other conversation after that.
So how do you navigate honoring someone's past service, 20 plus years, while also addressing the present problem?
You put a plaque on the wall. The Judith T. Myers Nursery / spanking room. Congratulations.
Don't do that.
Well, you don't call it the spanking room, but
But also face the reality that a legacy can be ruined.
Yeah,
that's just the truth. You
Ask
can
Joe
ruin,
Paterno.
and you might have to say that to that person. Oh my gosh, you might have to say that. I know you're not kidding. That's true. You're not kidding.
A joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's outlandish, but it's a legacy can be ruined.
You might have to say that to Miss Judy. Hey, Miss Judy, you've been serving here for 25 years. I mean, I see people in this room who were part of your ministry who are now, like,
changed the diapers of half of our
church.
Deacons. Congratulations.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, but we have to make this change, because if we don't make this change, the last thing that's going to be remembered is that we had to remove you from the nursery as a worker. And I don't want to have to do that. I don't want you to have to do that. So let's figure out how we can move forward together and keep your legacy intact.
So one aspect is not just addressing this one volunteer, but like kind of getting preemptive about it. So like Jeff, you talked about, you saw the issue with this one children's ministry worker and you kind of changed things that was going on. Obviously, also like one thing that you haven't talked about, your wife is like a children's ministry expert. So I bet your wife is probably coming in. It's like change. Like she's probably like putting things in different places. But like, how do you go about introducing new policies and what new things do you do on the onboarding process? So when you get new volunteers, they're already on board. What do you guys do for all that, whether it's in children's ministry or other areas?
I think when you step into a role like I did here, you have a meeting with all the children's volunteers that go, this is how we're doing it now. And you just rip the Band-Aid off. And if people are upset about it, you meet with them and talk about it. But that's just it. This is how we're doing it now. And then in terms of onboarding, we just have a meeting about once a quarter, every so often, where we do a training with any new volunteers, and we go make sure everybody's background checked. We use Planning Center and whatever the service is, that the checker, and we do the basic background check on everybody. And that's just the culture and the policy. We background check you if you're anywhere near anything next gen. You're background checked, and you have a training. And we have a manual that my wife put together. I would check, again, your denominational resources. Probably if you're in a denomination, they have something for this, or they use something like Ministry Safe or Safe Church. But yeah, this is one of those places where you just have to implement it and just be like hard about it.
I think we've all seen what happens when you skip the training. So I think this whole idea of, hey, just jump in, like that's not a thing anymore. Like there needs to be a walkthrough with volunteers so you can establish expectations, theology of service. Shadowing is huge for us. I know we do that in kids ministry, especially in youth ministry as well. This idea that we're just going to jump in and get at it. Like I think we've all seen that doesn't necessarily work well anymore. Like there needs to be clear expectations.
So let's have the actual conversation. Let's talk about like, what would this look practically for this pastor? Who should be in the room for this hard conversation?
Well, we're assuming that the poster is the pastor, not the youth ministry volunteer, youth pastor, next gen, whoever. But if you have somebody over you, have that person. So if you are the youth pastor, have the senior pastor in, or if you're the next gen pastor or whatever, have the executive pastor, the senior pastor. I don't know the size of your church. If you're the senior pastor, have an elder or two elders in on this conversation with you as well. This is not,
and I would say preemptively, you've had the conversation that you're going to have this conversation with the pastor and elders before this, so they're on board with you. Because if you go into this conversation and they're like, "Yeah, your new policies are dumb. We're not going to do that," I might resign. They have to have your back on this.
I still think you follow Matthew 18, right? Don't you go to the person
for sure.
first? First, have an initial conversation. And I'm okay, whoever you need to fill in first, but I would approach the person, just me and the person the first time. Unless there's like a history of conflict, that's different. Like if there's a history of conflict, I'm saying
I would, if I'm the youth pastor or children's minister in this situation, I'm going to my senior pastor first and going, "Hey, this is a situation that's arisen with Miss Judy.
Yeah,
and I want to have a conversation
Judy,
with her about it. I want."
Name.
You said
Dolores.
Judith, so I went with it.
I know.
Yeah, Miss Marge.
I'm thinking of Dolores Umbridge. She would be the one to be pinching kids.
Yeah, or hitting them with sticks or something.
Using the Cruciatus curse on them.
I don't know what that means.
I'm very cool. I've read Harry Potter a bunch of times.
I don't think cool and that go together. Anyway, so I would go to all I'm saying is I'd go to the senior pastor first and just make sure, hey, we're on the same page here, right? I'm going to go talk to her and have the conversation. But what I don't want to have happen is I go have the conversation and she goes to the senior pastor and the senior pastor says, "Yeah, we're not doing that. Don't worry about that." Now you've got your legs cut out from under you. And like, if that's the case, it's going to be just tough for you to do any kind of ministry there. So that's all I meant. But definitely after that conversation, I think Matthew 18, yeah, for sure, I'd follow that pattern. Go to them first and then bring in the elders if you have to.
I'm totally with you. This has happened in nursery and in kids ministry where our kidsman director has come to me, "Hey, I'm having an issue. Just so you know, I'm gonna talk to this person." And what's great about that conversation is maybe the senior pastor has a history of that person and can actually give you some pointers. Hey, lead with this in the conversation. Start here. Acknowledge this about their faithfulness in ministry, whatever. The senior pastor might be able to help you before you even have that conversation. So I would definitely say loop him in.
And you don't want the pastor or the elder or whoever it is, you don't want them blindsided by the fact that you had to confront somebody.
For sure.
So again, yes, you could get insight into that person's character, the history of the church. Hey, just a heads up, they've got 3 months to live. whatever it may be, you can.
What if you think it's 3 months and it's more like 15 years?
Oh,
Eventually you can't keep pinching those kids. But so you can get the insight, but also you don't want, when Dolores inevitably goes to Brother Tony and says, "Do you know what that pastor did to me?" Brother Tony is fully aware and is on board, because you don't want whoever Dolores is going to complain to be blindsided by the fact that
it is entirely possible that the senior pastor will have no idea that this is an issue. In certain church cultures, it is possible that maybe he's been there 5 years. Maybe he's newer. He's not much newer than you are. And he doesn't know Dolores is doing this in children's ministry because he's just not that connected to it, right? So it's entirely possible you bring this up to him and he's like, "What in the world? How come no one's ever told me this before?"
Is that why my kid has all those bruises on Monday?
Yeah,
weird.
It's entirely possible. And I would also, if you're the children's minister here and you're saying there are new families and new mothers being deterred from using the church ministry, I would have those names or those families, I would share that with the senior pastor. So-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so have all three told me that.
And they're giving potential.
No, I wouldn't. Well, but that they're all deterred from being comfortable using the nursery. I think that's important. Bring the receipts.
I do wonder if this is very apropos that this is Mother's Day week. We're talking about this.
Nailed it.
I
Boom.
do wonder if without a doubt this is probably an elder's wife.
No.
I was thinking to myself oh man, that
She probably sings too and is bad at it.
Ouch.
If this is true, I mean, that would add another layer to this. It's what if their spouse is also a key leader in a different ministry? Because Tim, how often did we? That's funny. How often did we deal with we have to have a difficult conversation with one person? And
I thought you were going. Tim, how often is your wife a problem? I thought that's true.
No, but but their spouse is a key leader in somewhere else that's doing great.
Multiple times already.
So, I mean, I guess a thing that you should consider, and this is a question for you guys, is how do you prepare for the possible emotional fallout, whether that is hurt feelings or gossip? If you're a younger pastor and this is an older person, assuming 20 years of ministry, of serving, that young Timothy knows nothing. He's from that woke generation that wants to pamper their kids and not do anything about their. It's bro, what's happening here? How do you prepare for the possible emotional fallout?
Well, I think you expect it. You need to expect high emotions in a situation like this. So you best be prayed up. I hope you've brought in some of your key leaders who can also be praying with you. I don't think you have to script what's going to be said. Storyboard would probably be a better word for it, because you need to be ready for a number of reactions from this conversation. A pastoral care plan should probably be ready. In the coming days, how are you going to reach back out? How are you going to continue to minister to this person? And this may be a situation, and this has happened, true story, this has happened, where I've asked the volunteer, "Are you still passionate about this ministry?" And they've straight up said, "Not really." I'm like, "Well, what are you passionate about?" And we've been able to shift them into a role that actually fit where they were at in that season. And we avoided a lot of pain and heartache because they weren't really passionate about that particular ministry anymore. So I don't even know if you've had that conversation, but you do need to go in expecting it's going to be emotional.
Expect ad hominem attacks. Expect them to make it personal to you. And so that's why Tim's saying you need to be prayed up. That's what you need to be prayed up about. Lord, help me to know who I am and what my ministry is here, and what they're saying is coming out of emotion. I had an older pastor tell me, when you're in those situations, your goal is to be dispassionate, and I mean, or even the John Mark Comer phrase of the non-anxious presence. I think that's really important. Yeah. In that room, you need to be dispassionate. This is just a conversation with logic and facts and reason. And we're here to care for you, and we want to restore you. This isn't about kicking anybody out, but this is about I also am called to protect everybody else in this congregation too. And the reality is, what you're doing right now is dysfunctional, and it is putting the congregation at risk. And I just can't allow that. And so we need to have this conversation. And, they might attack you personally, and that's fine. And if you need to say, you know what, let's stop meeting for today and we can meet again in 3 or 4 days. But until that time, you're not serving in nursery until this problem is resolved.
One question, and we're going to walk away with this, is if you were talking to a younger pastor about managing volunteers, especially volunteers who are older than them, what's your one piece of advice?
I would say don't wait until there's a fire to install smoke detectors.
Yes.
Clear
Free today, bro.
expectations, honest conversations. Like there needs to be a prevention plan in place. Like that just makes sense to me.
I think that's a good piece of advice. Helping create the policy before you have the problem, right? Like that's really good and wise. And it's not hard to create the policy. Like if this is a smaller church. I just told our kids person this. Go to the mega church in town because chances are they already have the policy because they already either have had legal teams help create the policy.
Yeah, their insurance company
or their insurance
gave
company,
it to them.
or they've gone through the tragedy and they've had to create the policy. So as a smaller church who's kind of gone under the radar and stuff like that, your mega church neighbors are actually your really good friends when it comes to policy because and this might sound not spiritual at all, but they have so much policy on everything that you should be able to pull from that. And
so just go visit like a secret shopper and then just like act like you're an interested parent and ask for their policy.
Get
if
all
you
their
tell them you're a
printouts
pastor-
and then drop them into Canva.
If you tell them you're a pastor of a small church nearby, they might try to like buy your church and make a campus. So just watch out.
That's not true.
They might
paint everything very, very white and get some cool uplighting.
We've had multiple churches do that.
As the local mega church advocate here, I will say I've gone to multiple mega churches and I've asked them.
We know you have,
Hey,
Frank. That walk was so far to the back of the sanctuary.
He does it to himself, man.
There's like a lot of rows. Like, guys, you don't understand how many rows there were.
I had to pause and breathe, dude. It was so far.
That's a reference that, like, hopefully people.
That's a deep cut.
That's a deep cut. There was a large church in Orlando that, like, it's a mega church, and I was like,
shout out First Baptist.
Their new member assimilation. It wasn't First Baptist, and they like
Discovery
emailed me all. It actually was Discovery.
Yep, that's the one.
My buddy Javier Enrique Sola is the sports pastor at Discovery.
He's been there. He's been there a long.
He's been there a long time. Get
Proud
this.
of him.
He and I went to seminary together. He went on a date with my wife in high school. It's cool. I wasn't around yet.
That's so crazy.
But when the senior pastor's son is Kirk Cousins,
yep,
you better believe that you have an awesome sports ministry because one of the highest players in the history of the NFL is tithing to your church.
Well,
big fan.
Lots of sports fields.
But the guy that was the worship pastor is a senior pastor there now, right? As far as I know.
Maybe.
All I'm saying is I went to that church, a very, very large church in a big city, and I saw that they had a really great assimilation process for new people. And I just like cold emailed them. I said, hey, I was at your church. I saw this. I'm a pastor. I would love the information. They sent me PDFs and all these other resources. And I was like, this is sick. Like, this is great. Like, they had this cool policy of like, when you're new, your first step is to figure out what your spiritual gifts are. So they get a spiritual gifts test, and that spiritual gifts test ties them to different ministry possibilities. Like, it was so like a well done plan. And I just emailed them. So don't listen to these like, oh, they're going to turn us into a campus. Just like,
they might
be honest and open. So with that being said,
and one more thing, when you are the younger pastor managing older volunteers, sit with them, get coffee. Hey, why are you passionate about this ministry?
For sure.
Before you get into you're doing everything wrong, tell me about your history. Tell me why this ministry matters to you. And then you might get some buy-in like, yeah, man, that is so cool. You know, you should really be teaching adult Sunday school to empowering the next 2 or 3 generations of our church to do what you did. Or, hey, you know, we're thinking about changing. I can tell how much you love the kids in this church. And because you love the kids in this church, I don't think we're going to have any problem changing this policy. And then you spin it that way.
So you gaslight them?
Yes. No, you reverse gaslight them. It's because you love the kids so much, you will have no problem no longer pinching them. Oh, of course. Yeah.
That's awesome.
The other thing you can do too, if you're a young guy coming into a ministry like this, where there's a lot of like different programs, is like give people permission that we don't have to have all these programs. And then you'll have less volunteers to manage. Like you might not need 17 Bible studies and a couple small groups, and you know what I mean. Like you might be able to simplify some things down. So
and
I would maybe
your
go that
church
route
doesn't
too.
need Celebrate Recovery. There's a big church down the street that has it. You're fine.
They're
for
probably
sure.
doing it
Probably
way better
mega
than you.
church.
Yeah.
They're gonna make you a campus.
With that being said, we hope to see you here, same time, same place next week. Hope you have a great week.
Happy Mother's Day.
I'm Frank Gill.
I'm Jeff Simpson.
I'm Andrew Larson.
And I'm Timothy Miller.
This is Practically Pastoring.
Were you waiting for the Delmar pause?
Bye, buddies.